Bard is a great opportunity if you want to advance in management, but nothing is guaranteed.
Welcome to Price Discovery, Money and Mindset. Go under the hood with Jordan Rodriguez, a certified financial planning professional and certified exit planning advisor, as he explores the art of balancing wealth with personal fulfillment. We'll hear strategies and stories from industry experts, business owners, and thought leaders about navigating the complexities of high net worth families and businesses. Without further ado, here's Jordan Rodriguez.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Price Discovery, Money and Mindset. This week's guests are the fourth and fifth generation of Bard Manufacturing out of Bryan, Ohio. Bill Steele, Pam Bard Steele, James Steele, and Megan Kimbell. We'll go through a number of different topics, but one of the most important is how to run a successful multi-generational family business. One note of housekeeping, I'm including a flip book in the show notes that I really encourage you all to page through to get a really good sense of the history of Bard Manufacturing. Enjoy. Thank you all for being here. We've got the Bard Manufacturing Dream Team with us today. So generous with their time from hot northwestern Ohio, beaming into hot northeastern Ohio. We've got Bill Steele, Pam Bard Steele, James Steele, and Megan Kimbell joining us. Again, thank you all for being here. We'll dive right in. A couple notes of housekeeping for the listeners. In the show notes, we're going to have bios and headshots, but also a really cool feature, a flip book of the 110th anniversary of Bard Manufacturing. It's a really cool history. I encourage everybody to flip through that book. They put a lot of hard work into making it a really visually appealing and interesting deep dive into the history of the company. If we start right off the bat, as a multi-generational company, you got 110 years under your belt, 5 generations in the business. We'll start with Megan. The lines between business and family with that level of longevity get blurred in a good way. How do you think the family values have influenced the company culture at Bard?
So our family values are the basis for our family business vision statement, which we have on all of the walls of our locations, and we review it at every company-wide meeting. So to put it simply, our employees understand that we're in it for the long haul. We want to keep them employed and create additional jobs, and we want to give back to the community. So there is a big blend between our family values and the values of the company and our employees.
One of the features that you guys pride yourselves so much on, and you have through the generations, is making sure that family members learn the business from the ground up. Now, Bill, as the most recent generational owner, can you describe how the involvement of family members in the business have changed or stayed the same through the generations?
Sure. I think probably the base answer is that it's become more formalized, the involvement and the training over the generations. If you go back to the second generation, when they started, it would be Pam's grandfather started in the business at about the age of 16 and actually took over the business at the age of 34. And that was due to an untimely death of Pam's great grandfather. So his was just kind of a ready or not. I'm involved in the family business, so I'm going to take it over. If you look at the third generation, both Jim and Richard were engineers in the company. I think it was just kind of more on the job training from that standpoint. There wasn't really anything formalized. Now, when the fourth generation, which would be Pam and I, came into play, is a much more formalized job rotation. In fact, I might have had 6 or 7 jobs throughout my career. And my running joke was, they got to find something I can do. But that's how we were. It was a more formal training, and it was dictated by the board of directors. They were the ones that stepped in and said, if there is a family member capable of taking over this position, we don't want to be an expert in the different positions, but they have to know which questions to ask. And as we go to the fifth generation, we actually formalized a participation policy, a family participation policy that outlined, how they would be involved, the financial advantages of being involved, and that type of thing. So we became more and more formalized as we went through the process as far as that goes.
One of the important aspects of this level of longevity in the family business is making sure the next generations want to be a part of the family business. James, if you don't mind detailing some of the strategies that the previous generations employed to keep you and Megan motivated and aligned with the company's vision.
Yeah, so I think you'll notice a bit of a pattern in my answers. The first is as working fifth generation in the business, we have seats on the company's board of directors. That really helps us stay motivated and aligned, not only in terms of our departments, our roles, but to really see the big picture, and have that longevity goal of the sixth generation, doesn't exist yet, but potentially one day. And to have the alignment of the motivations to keep the company going and successful. Bill mentioned the participation policy. That's something they implemented that has made a big difference for my sister and I in terms of not only, loving the family business, but not having to sacrifice from a financial perspective. As we've both had success outside of the role and came back, they made it a little easier on that.
And is there anything that you could see yourself continuing to carry forward with the sixth generation, adjusting, making changes to?
At this point in time, I wouldn't say that I'm the one to make that decision. I think if I sit in Bill's shoes 20 plus years from now, I'll have the experience to potentially make some tweaks. But Bill and Pam have done an excellent job with setting up the next generation for success.
Now, you mentioned the board of directors. Pam, I'd love you to describe how the board of directors for Bard Manufacturing integrates family members with external advisors.
Well, the goal is to have at least as many non-family external board members as family members. So right now we have 4 and 4. So the non-family board members include a past dean of one of the prestigious business schools in the area, a person who's a COO with a lot of experience at several large companies. We also have a person that has a lot of executive marketing background. And then again, our legal advisor there. And we're currently looking to add a 5th non-family board member with COO experience that's in our HVAC industry. So the board, we've really tried to, we feel like we're one big family, but at the same time, they bring amazing expertise to the company.
Now, is that ratio specific to your generation, or has that been kind of consistent through the ages?
It's kind of been consistent through the ages. We've really tried to make it so that we have both perspectives, outside perspective and an internal perspective as well.
So, James, if you wouldn't mind continuing by detailing some of the governance structures that are in place to manage the balance between family interests and business operations.
So two things that, Pam and Bill have done well. We have annual family business meetings. So that is more on the personal side rather than the business. That includes the third, fourth, and fifth generation family members, including the spouses who may or may not be in business currently. Now, in those meetings, we discuss, everything from financial tax implications, really just aligning the family in one direction. And that includes a third party facilitator, who really helps balance those family interests in business operations. Now, that third party facilitator also sits on our board of directors as our family estate planner. So he also helps provide guidance between that personal family aspect and the business operations. And then a third and final point, we have a hypothetical family flag that was actually created due to me always wanting to discuss family business matters at family time. So what that allows is that anyone can hypothetically throw the flag to stop the discussion of family business matters during family time. So those are 3 things.
Okay, so you got to tell me, now that you've let me behind the scenes a little bit, who's throwing the flag the most often?
So I am the biggest offender of the flag being thrown. I would say normally it's Pam or Megan who say that's enough family business talk.
So, governance structures are super important. They become more important as future generations are involved in the business. Bill, could you describe the decision-making process within the business? Potentially how disagreements with board members can be handled, if there are formal or informal governance structures there?
Inside the company, we have a 9-person executive team that includes 2 family members. So obviously we have 7. If you do the math, we have 7 non-family members on that. And they are really they guide the company day to day, and strategically and that type of thing. And I think we have found that, if a business decision is a good decision, 95% of the time that executive team is all on board and that type of thing. And it's kind of the same thing with the family. If it's a good business decision, 95% of the time the family is on board with that decision. What we've outlined in our family participation policy is that, that 5% of the time when maybe there's some disagreements, we have encouraged both the fourth and fifth generation to lean heavily on those non-family members on the executive team and the non-family members on the board of directors team. And, we basically kind of yield to them and then their expertise for guidance when we're making decisions or have some disagreements.
Fantastic. Really interesting. And that intermediary role is becoming more and more common as time's gone on. I've talked to a lot of families who have implemented that because, let's be honest, nobody wants to have to play the role of the bad guy. It's much easier to outsource that.
Exactly.
So let's drill down into the company itself a little bit. Through the flip book, the 110-year anniversary that our listeners will be able to read through, there's some examples of, the company diversifying product mix to get through the Great Depression, retooling and rekitting during wartime. Pam, can you provide some examples of how the company has shifted with economic and societal changes in recent history?
Oh, most definitely. I think that's how we've survived 110 years is that we've had to pivot, pivot, pivot. And some of the examples of really how we've changed, I think if you look back after World War II, probably 25% of the oil furnaces were barred furnaces. And you look and see how that has changed. Another major shift came in 97 where we had to leave the residential market. And that was probably one of our largest markets at that time. And we really decided to focus on commercial applications, to do really strategic vertical markets like the school industry, the data centers, and things along that line. We also, in 2018, built the James Arbard Center for Innovation, and that was to create a more collaborative environment because we saw as the individuals were coming out of the colleges, everyone was working more collaboratively, which is a kind of a shift compared to what maybe my generation was. It was more independent work. And then I think lastly, we are renovating our entire facility because we're seeing as students are coming out of the universities, they're just amazing. They're beautiful. Every facility is beautiful. So who wants to come work for a manufacturing firm that's not beautiful? We always say we try and make HVAC sexy. And so we're doing our best that we can there to just really make our work environment a great place and people want to come to work.
Do you guys have any pipeline or referral programs set up with specific universities that you draw a large crowd from?
We do. We work a lot with Northwest State and some of the other universities in our area, University of Toledo, Bowling Green. We have found that when we, decided to put the Innovation Center here in Bryan, we said one of our niches is that a lot of the people that are in engineering, whether it's mechanical or electrical, they work on the family farm. They love to tinker. They love to work with their hands. And then they want to come back to this area. And that's been super successful for us as far as employee retention and really just finding some salt of the earth employees.
Well, speaking of innovation, there's probably no one better than the fifth generation to talk about how technology has influenced the development of the company throughout the generations. You wouldn't mind taking it away, James?
With my tech background, a lot of my experiences in software and such. So, coming back into the family business, there's a much more focus on the hardware and the actual development process of a physical product. We invested heavily in our engineering labs. They look nothing like the second and third generation was accustomed to. We put multi-millions into the JRB Design Center. We have numerous labs that can test our equipment and such. And then we are constantly updating our engineering facilities. We feel that gives us a strategic advantage, when you're defining not only our current products, but the next generation of products as well. And then obviously from the software component, we have a new ERP implementation, CRM systems. We have a very interesting airflow software that can predict different airflow and such for the mechanical engineering design of our products and CAD design and such like that.
As you guys have grown, you've had to expand your footprint, your manufacturing capacity. I think it was in 2001 you guys made the decision to expand production capabilities outside of the United States into Mexico. Bill, what did that decision-making process look like? What were the inputs and variables that were considered to ultimately come to that conclusion?
I think our expansion outside the US is a prime example of the competitive advantage I think our board of directors gives us, our independent board of directors. Because I specifically remember the board meeting I was sitting in, we had just kind of, adjourned, we were on our way out, and one of the external board members said, "Hey, now we got to get Bart in Mexico." And my initial reaction was, "Yeah, right. The day that Bart is in Mexico, sure, right." Well, that's what happened, and just the fact that the board stretches us, encourages us to do things we think outside the box that we might not be able to do. And in hindsight, like you mentioned, we've been in Saltillo for 23 years now, and it's given us a tremendous advantage and flexibility and response time, and it's also kudos to the third generation, because this was about the time that they could have been thinking about retirement and riding off into the sunset, but they had their eyes on the future and the vision of the company, and decided to expand outside the US, even though they were at a time that it could have been pretty easy to just close the checkbook and ride off into the sunset.
Now, part of that family vision that you bring up is to build a sustainable company that can be passed to the sixth generation. How do you think about and prepare for leadership transitions, both within the family and outside of the family?
Yeah, I guess I can best speak from the when the transition happened with my generation, the fourth generation. The board of directors, once again, was heavily involved in that. I had already mentioned, I think, in this that they had us, my cousin-in-law and I, go through various different jobs throughout the facility to know what questions to ask. When it came time to have the leadership transition to the next president, they also brought in an industrial psychologist. He interviewed my cousin-in-law and I and several internal candidates. And then at that time, we had a non-family president, which was very helpful because he could provide input outside the family dynamics, because he'd been with the company for many years. And then the final thing was we interviewed privately with the board of directors. So then the decisions were made there. And from a leadership transition standpoint, once again, it helps to have an independent board of directors, because it just takes the family dynamics out of the equation. And, from the leadership transition to the fifth generation, it'll probably be a very similar process, I imagine. One of the things we have been very open with the fifth generation about is BART is a great opportunity if you want to advance in management, but nothing is guaranteed. From the previous generations, our company has grown, just too much to be able to say, "Oh, you're going to be the next person." And that decision will be left up to the board of directors. And we've been very open with the fifth generation. Who follows me will not be a family member, just because of the lack of experience within the family so far. So that's kind of what we foresee as the leadership transition to the next generation.
Very interesting. So I'm assuming that means it'll be a similar setup to the transition that occurred previously. There will be an outside family member who serves as president, no change in ownership or anything like that, but kind of bridging the gap between Gen 4 and 5.
Yep, absolutely correct.
So then, Pam, if you could describe the process of acquiring 100% of the company several years back, kind of with the overarching theme of why it is so important to keep the business within the family.
Well, our side of the family never had a long-term plan of owning 100% of the company. That was a surprise to us, and we were put in a position to exercise our right of first refusal when my cousin came to us and said, I want to share. At that time, it was 40%. I want to sell my portion of the company. And by the way, I want cash. And by the way, I want it by the end of the year. So we had 6 months to figure this all out. Our managing partner agreement had outlined all the procedures of what to happen. We each had to get an evaluation of the company, and then we were to take the average of the two, and that would be the financial side of it. We have everything laid out. The part of our managing agreement is that we never put in there a timeline. We never thought that someone would make a demand of that, that severe. The plan had always been, oh, maybe over a 5-year period, a 10-year period. So we didn't know at that point if we would be financially able to keep the company 100% family owned. And so you talk about phenomenal stress from the time this whole process was initiated, but it all worked out, and we own 100% of the company. And and you can ask yourself, why is it important to us to keep it family owned? Well, I think our vision statement is that we're going to build a sustainable company that can be passed to the sixth generation. So every decision we make is based on that. So there was never even a thought of, oh, we'll sell too. That never even crossed our mind. I view our role as like you're running this relay race. And right now, Bill and I have the baton. We got it from Jim and Richard, the third generation, and we're getting ready to pass it off to James and Megan and their spouses to say, okay, now it's your turn to make it better than you found it. I study a lot of different family businesses, and one that I love is the Antinori family in Italy. They've been making wine for 26 generations, 5 centuries. And that's their whole philosophy. Their whole philosophy is not for one generation to benefit from all the hard work of the others and cash in. It's to make it better and pass it on. And that's the philosophy that we have, that we hope that each generation will continue.
I love that you touched on that, because from an outsider's perspective looking in, it's so easy to think that it's almost an arbitrary decision that the business needs to be family owned. But you just touched on that vision is the guiding light of the family through generations, right? Like if you depart from that, suddenly you can compromise on everything. So being stalwart in the vision and the values that you guys carry through is so important. I love that. Back to Megan. It's been a while. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well.
So we've been talking about the company's history, founding principles. What steps are you taking to ensure that those histories and founding principles are honored and maintained, not only in your generation, but to carry forward into future generations?
Yeah, that's really important to us and the company. So in the lobby of our innovation center, we have a history wall, and that highlights the key events that have happened over the past 110 years, just to remind employees and visitors of what got us to where we are today. We also have a quality policy, and that has been with us since the start as well. And so all the employees are audited on that as a part of our ISO certification process. But it reminds everyone of those key principles that have helped make us successful from the start. And that's to be flexible, quick responding, continuously improve, and meet or exceed our customers' expectations. So keeping those values and priorities front of mind. And like you said, Jordan, it's our 110th anniversary. So we've been celebrating all year long with our employees, our customers, our communities that we have our facilities in. So it's just been a great year to think about the history and think about what's gotten us here.
And it's one of the things I respect most about your company is that everybody talks about company culture, vision, mission statement. It's more than just ordering pizzas to the break room on the second Wednesday of every month. You guys walk the walk. You're not just talking the talk. You truly do live the mission, the vision, and you make sure that your people also understand why you're doing what you're doing, which is huge. That is true company culture. I respect the heck out of that. One of the topics I frequently discuss with clients are the concurrent paths of personal financial planning and business planning. Kind of going back to the first part of the conversation, the line between family and business gets blurred. Again, not in a bad way, but in a good way, in my opinion. Bill, if you don't mind describing that intersection and what it means to your family. James, you touched on some of the family meetings that you guys have and bringing in the intermediary. But Bill, what sort of ethos are you trying to create around those two concurrent paths within your family?
Sure. I think we're very fortunate that our executive vice president and our vice president of finance have experience with family businesses. So they understand the dynamics of the financial planning, from whether it's estate planning or diversifying the assets or, that type of thing. And they are heavily involved in any kind of financial decisions that the family makes, because the last thing we want to do is put the business in jeopardy financially. And so we want to make sure that not only those two key executives, but also our independent board of directors, our non-family board members, are on board with if we ever try to diversify assets or that type of thing. I think probably the primary assistance in our financial and business planning is we're very fortunate that we only have two stockholders. and that's Pam and I. And it's kind of interesting. I did an exercise, and over the years, if through the four generations we had done the traditional estate planning, practice of gifting stock, at a time of death, we would have, I think we calculated, over 60 family members as stockholders. Somehow, and it wasn't really a strategic move, but somehow over the years at each generation, they've kind of whittled that down to fewer and fewer until, we were put in the position that Pam and I had to buy the company. But I think the reason that's important on the business and financial planning side is we don't have to worry about the priorities of family members that don't work in the business. So we're able to make decisions of putting money back into the business when it's needed. So I think those are the primary things that give us guidance on that business versus personal financial planning.
It's absolutely a simplifier not to have the octopus, the spider, whatever you want to call it, but all the different legs of ownership within the business. It makes decision making a lot more swift and concentrated. But James, if you could add to that, Bill mentioned a couple, your executive vice president have a lot of experience working with family businesses, but who else has a seat at the table in some of these personal financial and business planning decisions?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the best things that, each previous generation has done as they pass down the family business is make sure that all who are involved in the business and the family have a seat at the table to make those decisions. Really two main ways. One is the family business meetings. As we get all the generations together, we take an entire day, and that's the personal side. The other side is the board of directors, and making sure that the next generation, if they're involved in the business, has a seat on the board of directors for those business operations decisions as well. And, this really facilitates that interest and that buy-in from the next generation, to continue on the legacy and such.
Community involvement has been one of the really important components of making BARD what it is today. Megan, I'm hoping you can explain what role community plays, not only to your family, but to the company as a whole.
Certainly. So, giving back has always been a priority in our family for as long as I can remember. You could say it's in our family's DNA. But growing up, James and I, saw the fourth generation take leadership roles in community service clubs, local foundations, coaching youth sports teams, anything under the sun, you name it. They were spending their time in the community giving back. I'll throw a plug in. Pam started a annual arts and music festival in Bryan each July. And beyond just our local community, Bill was the chairman of our HVAC Industry International Trade Association. So they are just involved in so many things, and we've grown up seeing that firsthand and the importance of it. And then from a business perspective, you could look at the third part of our family vision statement, which is leave all the BARD manufacturing campsites a little nicer than you found it. So that's something we're always keeping front of mind. And with the Bard Steel Family Foundation, we've been able to do some really great things in the communities where our facilities are. And it's just brought some really wonderful things to the community.
The Bard Steel Family Foundation has kind of formalized the role of community involvement and the company. Pam, would you mind expanding on that for me?
Sure. Meg mentioned a little bit about one of our vision statement bullets is to always leave the campsite nicer than you found it. And again, that's kind of what leads our foundation, is that we really try and make the three facilities where our employees live and work nicer areas. And so maybe just a little bit about that would be, we have a fountain on our square in Bryan, which is beautiful, and that we call the Bard Centennial Fountain. We've donated a lot of money to the Boys and Girls Club in Madison. We support so many different things in the area of the arts, like Meg talked about Flair on the Square. As far as other Christian-based programs, we try and sponsor. We just had Sidewalk Prophets in for our 110th anniversary, which was a wonderful concert. But we try and do that as well. You make them free concerts for the community so that they can really come together and enjoy. So no, we just try and make it better, make it a better place. So
was the process of creating the family vision and the company vision, was that formal? Did you guys meet with consultants to really put pen to paper and make that the DNA of the company, or is that something you guys have just lived by and it's morphed into what it is today?
I think the formalized part of it, and coming up with the three basic premises of it was encouraged by our board of directors. They basically say, Bill and Pam, you got to make sure your employees know what you stand for, where we're going, what you see the future, and that type of thing. And in fact, it's just kind of ironic, we when we first unveiled these, it would have been, probably I do a couple of all communication meetings twice a year where I go and visit the facilities and do presentations and update all the employees on the business. And it must have been February or March of 2019 I unveiled these three principles of our family vision. And of course, as it's been mentioned, the first one is build a sustainable company that can be sustained through 6 generations, which are grandchildren that we don't even have. Well, 2 months later is when the bomb was dropped on us that, oh, by the way, I want to sell my 40%. And so it was kind of like, well, we got to put our money where our mouth is. We've told our employees this is our vision. And like Pam said earlier, we never wavered from it. So, in answer to your question, it was really kind of promoted by the board of just, you got to let your employees know where you stand and where you're going. And those are the three that Pam and I came up with. And it wasn't, we didn't hire a third party creative marketing group or anything like that. It was just that this is what we stand for. This is where we want to go.
That's fantastic. Well, Pam, Bill, James, and Megan, I appreciate you taking the time this morning. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I love that you keyed in on all. I didn't even need to lead you to where I wanted you to go. You were talking about vision and mission the entire time, and I think it is such a crucial component that so many companies are missing the ball on because, it seems fluffy, right? People say, oh, you have to write down your mission statement. You have to write down your vision statement. We learned that in college, we learned that in high school entrepreneurship classes, but the most successful companies I work with, observe, see out in the world, they'll be the first to tell you that if you don't have a focused mission and vision and you don't live it and breathe it, you're not going to end up aligning with it and getting there. So thank you so much. Do you guys have any parting thoughts for the audience? Anyone can jump in here. It's a free for all.
Other than I couldn't be more proud of our fifth generation. And when I say fifth generation, I mean that all four of them, including spouses. I talk all the time about how it doesn't matter what company you would work for, you would want to hire all four of them. And we're very fortunate that three of them have made the decision to join the family business. And so we think the future is going to be really bright for us.
I'm happy to hear it. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jordan.
Price Discovery Money and Mindset is brought to you by Wernick Wealth Managers and Chagrin Valley Business Strategies. Opinions expressed by Jordan and guests are their own and do not represent investment advice, solicitation, or the like. For more information and resources referenced in this episode, be sure to check out the show notes. Thank you and see you next time.